You asked for it, so here it is. We have epitomized this legendary vehicle in one of our limited time only posters made by the incredible artist Destiny.
That's right, and we couldn't let an FD RX-7 slip by. Like, this is one of my favorites. It looks so very cool. Limited time only. If you've got part of the collection already, this will extend your collection, or maybe you can just start it with an FD, which is probably the way to go.
We will individually autograph your order and send it to you anywhere in the world. These will be available for a strictly limited time, and once they're gone, they will be gone forever. So grab yours right now. We will sign it and ship it from right here in Super Garage, and it directly goes towards supporting the show and supporting awesome builds like this one that we're about to kick off onto right now. So there is a link down below and a thing popping down. Grab yours now. And Martin, it's a big episode this time, isn't it?
It's a big episode. Only the most special of special cars end up on a poster, and we're going to get this thing working, hopefully in this episode. Here are some of the goodies that have arrived since we last saw the car. We've got a Nexus S3. This is hot off the press. This basically replaces the Elite series. It's an upgrade. It's got a built-in wideband controller, which is awesome. I'm also going to use some Haltech branded ignition coils, super high output. They also make a basically adapter to make that work. And then I've got myself a replacement loom. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that, but one of them is the factory loom is properly brittle. Like, all the wire and the sheath on the wire goes really, really hard because the rotary generates so much heat, and this is all under some covers and stuff in there that it pretty much just bakes and destroys the harness and falls apart. So you can get aftermarket ones like this. This is for right-hand drive and single turbo. So there's some stuff on here missing that we just don't need anymore, and that will plug into our Haltech via. We've got an adapter. You could also plug and pin it. You can get custom-made ones that have the Haltech plugs, but in this case, we've got an adapter which will work really nicely, plus the usual array of sensors, pressure sensors to make sure everything's good. Over here, Plasma Man intercooler. So we need to basically install this brace into the car to hold everything, but the original radiator still works. That has a huge cooling capacity, perfect for what we need, and still fits really nicely into the front of the car without too much tickling of the chassis. There's a little bit of stuff we've got to move and cut, but overall, it's a pretty neat setup. So Omar's heading up from race only. He's going to give me a hand for the rest of today, and we're going to see how much progress we can make on this excellent RX-7.
Have I bitten off more than I can chew? Yes. That's a resounding yes, and like so many projects, the more you strip it back, the more you find you have to fix, and the scope of the project blows out. But I would argue this groundwork, the not very flashy or fun mods, are what reliable cars are built upon. And this is why we do it. If it's a car you truly care about, the time and effort, and let's be honest, money you put in now will pay off for years. You know it's done right, and you know it inside out. This is also the reason you should never sell your project car before it's finished, because you never get to enjoy it properly. I've definitely been a bit more shy about pulling this thing apart and drilling holes in it, being that it's rare, kind of expensive, and also special, being that we got to drive it in Japan and back to where it was made. The front of the car does come off pretty easily, but there are some sneaky bolts in the top of the bumper and guards that I have to get to. It's quite likely the car copped a hit in the front because a lot of this plastic stuff is broken.
So these lights look like a fairly typical JDM aftermarket installation. It's got these little Scotch lock things that just clip over the wires. It's all rusted. I guess it's cool. Was that cool in 2004? I mean, I was alive then, I remember it. I guess that's cool. But anyway, that's going to go. Then we have to make room for our intercooler.
This front plastic piece won't be reused, so it can be kicked into the bin, and the assortment of random horn upgrades can be deleted as well. Next step is to drill out the front reinforcement bar, ready for its replacement that comes with the intercooler kit. While going back and forth about the race-only parts, I got talking to Omar, who runs the shop that makes them all, and he offered to come down and give me some pointers. Apparently this is what a working and fast RX-7 sounds like, but I wouldn't know because I haven't really had either yet.
The way I found you guys is because of all these parts.
Yes.
I've obviously seen them on a lot of roadies over time, but when I started looking around at, how you solve annoying old car problems, like these, for example, with the injector, adapters and stuff is awesome. So how did you get into that side of it?
So that started roughly 5 years ago. So obviously we've been in a workshop for quite a time, and you do lots of the work, and you get frustrated with stuff doesn't fit the way it's supposed to, or it takes heaps of mucking around to get going. And I actually had one of my guys who was working for us, he did CAD design, and he started drawing some stuff and he's like, why don't we make some stuff? And it literally started from that, honestly. So the first part we made was the AST delete, which I think you guys have got as well. And from there, we were just like, once we got that done, it was just like, man, let's do it all. Like every time we had a problem, we're like, let's fix that issue, start off with something new, and go from there. Like even the fuel rail, the way it's bent on the ends is so that it can fit any intake manifold, right? So it could be straight, and lots of them are straight, but then they don't work with every intake manifold because obviously, you can have 5 intake manifolds for that engine. So just little things like that just meant that we could use the one product to satisfy, 10 different combinations.
Is it true that once you're a Rotary person, you're always a Rotary person? It seems to be my experience.
I feel that way.
Because I was looking at this just earlier today, and I was just looking at it going, that's an engine. It looks like a barrel. Like it looks nothing like anything else. And it's old technology in that, they started in the 60s, whenever it was. And here we are, and we're still making all these awesome high-tech parts. We can still use, injectors. We can use Haltex to run them. We can put ignition cores off V8s on them. Like we can do all this sort of really cool stuff with it.
We have so much. And you know what? I don't know if you guys will ever get there, but if you ever strip one of them down, you'll fall in love with how simple they are.
Yes.
There is literally such little magic inside that engine.
It feels like there's magic in there though. How can this work? I still have that going through my head. But anyway, I appreciate you coming down because what I'm stuck on is you've got your oil metering lines and that looks a bit broken. A lot of this was sort of heat damaged.
They're all heat damaged.
This is the kind of thing that I like to, from the experience I do have with all cars, is you get that right because getting in there again is hard.
Correct. You never want to come back here again.
I want to put this like a rail adapter in and just know that it's right. And every time you start it, you've got that satisfaction. Same with I know you make a lot of replacement parts for the plastic stuff.
So all the plastic stuff, So this is a common leakage point. So they normally crack right under this bottom neck section here. Even the power steering reservoirs, we make a billet version of these, and they also crack and leak from the bottom as well.
Right.
So we've basically been moving one plastic part at a time. We're even doing the brake reservoir as well.
Wow.
So they super common for them to melt when you go single turbo. Maybe you get away with a bit more because that turbo is low mounted.
Yes.
But lots of the high mount stuff, you definitely cook that. You can actually see right at the top of that bottle. You can actually see it's slightly melted on the top. Very common. Man, it's honestly, like I said, once you start, you just, we even do pulley kits, and the pulley kit started with this little bugger here. So the bearing in this always likes to fail. And Mazda charge almost $350 for that one pulley.
Wow.
So we're like, you know what? If we're going to make it, we might as well do all of them. And we do something that makes it look good and addresses an issue at the same time. And that's been the theme with every part we make.
As proof of how reliable these RX-7s can be, Omar came to Super Garage in one of his customers' cars that they've just finished all the mechanical work on.
From this part here, I think yours is pretty much identical.
Similar.
Same fuel rails, same AST delete. It'll be the same filler, same drive-by wire. Again, we're talking about the billet power steering reservoir. That's what they look like.
I see.
It's literally identical.
You know what I like about this? Look at all the room that's freed up here.
Yes, correct.
That's one thing that makes me happy because I'm also nervous about putting everything on and then not being able to get to something.
You can go all the way in. You can do whatever you need to do. It's all really easily accessible and serviceable. So it's look, honestly, once you clear out all the twin turbo stuff, I actually think they're one of the easiest engines to work on.
Well, there's space. But this is, so thanks, man. This is very inspirational to see how it might look done. And I think there's one or two more bits that we're going to grab from you, like I think the filler neck.
Yes, we're doing the filler.
We've already got the coil bracket.
I think we're going to do a reservoir, and we'll probably do some pulleys as well, I believe.
Yeah, mad.
But everything on this car is all about being well placed. Even fuel regulator is hidden nicely at the back there, so you can't really see.
Oh yeah, nice.
You know what I mean?
GFB.
So no plumbing there as well.
Cool.
Even the flex sensors go straight down the bottom of the reg. It's really, really easy to drive as well. It's terrifying to drive it.
Well, this gets me excited, so I'm basically just going to dig into mine, and when I run into trouble, I'm going to either ring you or send you a photo and be like, "What do I do with this?"
I'll be keen for that. So it should be awesome.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Now I'm freshly inspired from my chat with another Rotary expert, it's time to dive back in. The front of the car needs to be picked off to make way for the front mount intercooler. It's a pretty small amount of cutting considering the size of the upgrade and what it unlocks. And yep, it is looking a bit rusty in behind that support. There's a few more small cuts I have to make everything fit, but once that's done, I'll be able to paint it all up and make it rust-proof.
So for anyone who is worried about cutting up their fancy, very rare, expensive car, just remember that even though yes, this is probably an expensive car, it's also a base model, so there's heaps of them. And I really like this intercooler kit. We've got basically this support that gets welded in here to put all the strength back in that we took out by getting rid of that. This is very chunky. It holds the intercooler in place, and we just make a bit of room for the end tanks, and we get two really nice, neat pipes that go up to the front. As you could see from the car that Omar brought with him, you can basically do a V-mount on the top, which uses all this space up here, and that is a nice way to do it. You can also buy those kits, I think, from Japan. Trust or Grady or someone make them. Otherwise, you've got to make your own one, or the other option is a front mount, which will do a lot for our intake temps as well.
While I'm here, I'll clean up any surface rust and coat it so it doesn't get any worse. The replacement bar bolts into position, and then I can weld it into place with a MIG welder. The cooler then bolts in and the pipes go up through the middle of the radiator support. This will all be hidden behind the bumper bar, so black paint will do just fine. Now, shoehorning front mount intercoolers into cars of this era has always been worth doing, but not always straightforward. The factory intercoolers are often compromised by either a lack of flow, packaging, or safety requirements of the era, and power took a back seat. There was also the gentleman's agreement that the cars wouldn't make more than 205 kilowatts. Back in the day, this was introduced as a preventative measure to make sure that all the different Japanese brands didn't end up in a horsepower war. Now personally, I would have loved to see the outcome of this, but alas, it's not the case. At least not from the brands themselves, but the aftermarket has come to save the day. Or start the war, depending which way you look at it. The cooler we can make the air coming out of our new single turbo, the more dense it's going to be. Add some fuel to that and the bang is bigger and better. It doesn't matter if it's banged inside a housing or a cylinder, cooler is always better. On Omar's advice, I'm going to drill and tap the water pump housing to supply water for the turbo to keep it cool. And it will need all the help it can get because these things make an extraordinary amount of heat.
I'm going to replace all the old pulleys with this awesome custom-made kit from Race Only. Comes with all the idlers, the gears, the bearings, and hardware to make it all work.
Here we go now.
Next, I'm going to replace the thermostat housing and also the oil filler neck, both bits of plastic that also rot on a hot FD engine bay. This holds the oil filter, but what's cool about this is as a block, you also get oil temperature, oil pressure, you can run different sensors. He has the original outlet there for the oil cooler, which the Rotary comes with factory. Comes with these little O-rings in there. I put a tiny bit of grease just to hold them in place because you do have to install it that way. And these studs go in, then it uses the factory mounting hardware. This is cool because you can do like your oil feeds, you can do sensors, you can do all that sort of stuff, and it's just a nicer way of doing it rather than using the 25-year-old or even older design. I love stuff like this. It makes everything easier, clean, and looks cool. I'm very happy with the progress. I'm working my way from the bottom up. I'm going to have the manifold on soon, doing all the hoses, the coolant, the belts, everything is looking excellent. I'm now also going to put this oil and pressure and temperature sensor in that I got from Haltech. This will plug directly in, talk to our ECU so we can keep an eye on that, and also set up safeties, which is very important. This will screw straight into this block here as well, which makes it very simple. So that can go in. The lower part of the intake manifold is on, and this is all coming together. And when you put that back on, it starts to look like an engine again, albeit a slightly strange, spinny engine. Anyway, we've got the adapter here. There's a few other things I'm going to do, like as Omar suggested, I'm going to delete these butterflies. They're only really used for cold start anyway, and so I'm going to take that off and just plug the hole that's in there. And then this adapter will adapt onto an electronic drive-by-wire throttle body. That will sit back on there, and then now I know where everything is, I can start to seriously look at plumbing, so intercooler plumbing, fuel, breathing, everything pretty much. One of the first things I bought for this was a coil bracket. So this actually sits down on the frame rail and gets the coils away from the heat of the engine. We've then got these leads which come off here, and I'm going to use Haltech IGN1A ignition coils. These have heaps of power, really big, massive heat sinks on the back as well. And basically these get installed into this bracket like that, and then the coils hang off the edge with the leads like that. Pretty awesome.
The coil bracket goes together nicely, and after staring at the engine bay for a while, I decided I don't actually know where they fit at all. That's now a problem for later on, and in the meantime I'll do something I do know how to do, which is make some intercooler pipes. I'm using the ones supplied with the kit as well as a reducer and some extra bends to make it all work with my particular setup.
So I have an 82mm Bosch drive-by-wire throttle on there. To get back into an intercooler pipe is a little bit tricky because it comes with this sort of funny, I don't know, lip thing, which you can see on there. This, made by Plasma Man, is a plasma clamp, but what it does is it adapts from the throttle body into their clamp, and from there you can then adapt into whatever size you want. So in this case it reduces down to 2.5 inch, which matches my intercooler piping. You can also go to a bigger as well, bigger one like that. It's a really neat way of doing it, and all I got to weld is that, the rest of it just bolts on. I've got a lot of the hardware in place, it's time to put the loom back in. I've got the aftermarket loom here, got the original grommet, put that back on, but I've also got a bit of conduit and put individual wires in there that are different colours for future-proofing stuff, so I don't have to try and dig it out and drag more wires through. That means I've got a bit of spaghetti mess here, but it means I can add things like sensors, stuff that's not on the factory loom. So I'm going to jam that back in and get close.
The loom I've got has the OEM plugs on it, but you can get custom-made ones to suit aftermarket ECUs also. Dave from Haltech is going to come and give me a hand later on, but I want to try and get as much of this roughed in myself before I bring in reinforcements. Next, I need to sort out fuel supply. As these cars age, the original fuel systems can get less reliable, and it can cause lean-outs at high RPM, which is bad news for an expensive rotary engine. To ensure that doesn't happen, I'm putting in a radium fuel hanger that is also a surge tank, and it fits into the same location as the factory one, and it's a good one-step upgrade. This will support way more power than I'll ever be making. But once I've got the hanger out, I'm going to suck out all the old fuel into a container to be disposed of.
All right, so the original RX-7 fuel hanger looks like that. And you can just chuck one pump in that, like old school upgrade, and put a bigger one in there using the original stuff. You are limited to an 8mm feed with the radium one that I've got here. You can use much bigger feed on there as well, but also it will do 3 pumps, which is pretty cool. Basically, you've got to pull this apart, and then there's accommodation in there for 3 different pumps. It's a really neat thing actually, because the pumps sit up here, and there's even a filter screen at the bottom, and then there's actually, comes with a kit, it's like a little surge tank, because actually you've got a low pressure pump that will feed into this, and then it picks up fuel from inside with a ball valve that stops it from emptying. So there's always fuel available underneath the pump. Really nice bit of kit. I love these things for all sorts of cars. I've used them in many of them. Just a really nice way of modernising the fuel system. You don't have to think about it again, and you've got future expandability. This will do like probably up to 300 kilowatts or more, but you are limited a little bit. This, just the sky's the limit. So into my fuel hanger, I have installed a TI Automotive 525 pump. That's about as big as you can get in just your traditional sort of fuel pump. Should be plenty of fuel. The system also comes with a lift pump. So we have to put a little lift pump, which is just a GSS 341, a very basic upgrade that I've just stolen off another car. All that has to do is lift fuel under low pressure into this baffle, and then that picks up the fuel from there. So essentially it's like a surge tank and lift pump together. This all plugs together and it's all wired from the top. So we're gonna chuck this in the car and then wire it up.
This is a lot of pump housing to fit into a small space. The instructions tell you to attach the fuel level sender separately once it's lowered into the tank, which I found pretty challenging because I don't have 3 arms. Some tin snips further destroyed the purity of my Mazda, but at least I won't have roasted apex seals popping out the exhaust from a lean out.
Next, I will need to wire it and plumb it, but before I do that, I'm gonna finish some work on the intercooler in the front of the car. This is all looking good. Dave's already got the Nexus S3 loaded up on his computer, so you don't need to have this plugged in the 12 volt. It'll run off bus power, which is super handy because what he's doing basically is getting his map in terms of the I/O where everything goes done in advance, so you don't have to have the car up and running. So I've still got time to do fuel system and other stuff, and he can have this all ready to go, so it basically plugs in, a few checks, and off we go. Now the engine bay looks pretty much the same as it did 9 hours ago, but Dave has got the car, I reckon, about 80% wide. I've got a few things to do. I've got to finish the fuel return and the flex sensor. I've also got to get that fuel feed up from the back of the car to the front, so I'll stick it back on the hoist for that. It's been quite a productive day. We've got heaps done. Stick with us. We're getting there, people.